we go. Enough rambling on my part, at least. Shake my hand. As though I actually need to do this to get ready for it. Hey, this is Dave Geister, the Monster Movie Happy Hour, and we're about to record one of our Monstrous Musings episodes. Mary, unfortunately, could not join us tonight, but our dear Scott Cheeseborough is here. And, you know, typically we do one of these episodes to, give Mary useless life advice, and although we've never actually successfully once done that,
She's wise enough that she doesn't take it.
She's definitely wise enough. But we typically get a chance to talk to somebody who's in some way connected to, monster kids or the horror film world. And we were very fortunate enough tonight to have David Weiner with us. And if you don't know who he is, you really should, because even if you don't know his name, you know his work. And David, welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be with you guys.
Well, it's
and hello to Mary in absentia.
Oh,
yes.
I'm sure she'll appreciate that. And if you don't mind, David, I'm just actually going to read what we found via our Lord and Savior Wikipedia's.
Oh, okay. It should probably be less than 100% correct, but probably more than 75%.
Okay.
Well, it's good that you're here in person to correct any.
Exactly. If I get something wrong, please
Sure.
let us know. But this is what the great guy at Wikipedia has to say. David A. Weiner, produced Weiner, is an American filmmaker, magazine editor, and journalist. He's a contributor to the Hollywood. There we go. See, this is exactly what we were talking about. He was a contributor to the Hollywood Reporter and LA Weekly, and is a former senior editor for Entertainment Tonight Online. He was the executive editor of Famous Monsters of Filmland from 2015 to 2016, which resulted in him winning the Rondo Hatton Award for Best Interview of the Year in 2015. And that was for his interview with Mel Brooks, pretty amazing, for the 40th anniversary of Young Frankenstein. And as well as winning the award for Best Classic Magazine for Famous Monsters of Filmland. And that's 2 years in a row. David wrote and directed the 2019 documentary film In Search of Darkness, its sequel In Search of Darkness Part 2, and the 2022 documentary film In Search of Tomorrow. And we have David on tonight to talk about his latest love, his latest major endeavor, and it's a big one at that, and that is Part 3 to In Search of Darkness. So awesome. Seriously, thanks again, David. And just feel free to correct any one of these things that we probably got wrong here.
That's okay. No, that all is so far so good in the correct department.
Okay. Well, I just want to say right up front, and I think I'm speaking for Scott here as well too, and certainly Mary, because we've talked about this several times over the last week or so here. We're big fans of the documentary series.
Yeah.
I think you've done us all a great service by directing these. There is so much material there, and I, for one, really, truly enjoy that. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah. You know, for the uninitiated, In Search of Darkness, and In Search of Darkness Part 2, which you can find both on Shudder currently, and like
Correct.
Amazon Prime and AMC Plus. And now we're up to In Search of Darkness Part 3. Each of these movies are 4.5 hours. In Search of Darkness 3 is the longest film of the series. It's now 5 hours and change.
Oh my goodness.
And the reason for the length of these movies is that it's a look at 80s horror cinema and a decade of 80s horror. And so you go chronologically from 1980 all the way through 1989, where within each year there's a number of film segments that we tackle and talk about and discuss. And then in between, there's larger context chapters. The heroes, the villains, the special effects, the pop culture, the political, socio-political culture going on that's affecting the films, and conversely, the films are affecting what's going on in the zeitgeist.
Yep.
And so it's an ongoing story. You'd think you could sort of tackle it all in one film, but there's just so much ground to cover because there's so many amazing films during that time. And so telling this story in each film The first one we had almost 50 icons and legends from the era and experts as well talking about it. So people who were in front of the camera, behind the camera, whether it's John Carpenter or Barbara Crampton or Heather Langenkamp, Cassandra Peterson, Elvira herself.
Yes.
We just had an embarrassment of riches with the talent. Joe Dante. I mean, I could literally laundry list it. And when we did part 2, we wanted to go a deeper dive into more eclectic titles, but we also wanted to talk about international films, Italian film, all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
We went to Japan to talk to Shinya Tsukamoto, the director of Tetsuo, the Iron Man. We really talk about eclectic. That's a crazy film.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it is.
And we added, that was a pandemic film where we shot right in the middle of the pandemic. And so we did 23 more interviews there, which was ultimately 15 more faces because we did some repeat visits from some talent. And now In Search of Darkness Part 3 we've got 50 brand new faces. It's the deep, dark recesses of the video store, the bottom shelf, the underbelly of 80s horror, but also a lot of the theatrical stuff that we just haven't gotten to yet that is really well known. I mean, Prom Night, or even Jaws the Revenge,
Oh, sure.
Serpent the Rainbow, Monkey Shines. I mean, there's something for everyone. And lastly, I'll say about In Search of Darkness 3 is that collectively we have 70 interviews telling this tale. Like I said, 50 brand new faces, but 20 are carried over because I would sit down with all these people for 1, 2, sometimes even 3 hours. I sat down with Robert Englund for 3 hours. I mean, it's just a pinch me moment in my career. Yep. And this is just an ultimate celebration of the era of a explosive time in filmmaking where technology merged, the VHS explosion and practical effects to just create all these indie, creative, money-grabbing, unapologetic movies.
I've got to believe
the beauty of it.
If you've got a finished product that runs about 5 hours, that there's probably 3 or 4 times that amount that you had to cut to get it all to fit. Would that be roughly correct?
I do not have an exact tally, but let's assume that it's a fact. We have over 100 people, maybe 120 people collectively over this 14-hour, when you put all 3 movies together, a 14-hour exploration through a decade. Each person has a interview that lasted an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours. And then you sort of do the math and you start putting, say you have the 50 people in the first movie and you have a 4.5-hour movie. You still just have slivers of the best, coolest, most related bits that make sense to tell this tale. But I did say the best, and I don't fully mean that. It was best for that particular part 1. But part 2, where you're talking about a whole different set of films, a whole different set of topics, there's all this great material that's perfect to continue this collective conversation about, what a decade this was. And so, lots and lots and lots and lots of material that we still haven't even gotten to. And I got to figure out what to do with.
We're glad somebody's been doing the heavy lifting, although it sounds also like a labor of love in many ways. You talk about the pinch me moments, sitting down to talk with these very iconic individuals who, from everything I can tell, seem to be pretty genuine, pretty generous people who are happy to tell their stories and are sometimes kind of flummoxed that we have such fondness for work they did.
That is a true
decades
statement.
ago.
It's very flummoxed sometimes.
Yeah.
And of course, with so many of those films, it's always pretty amazing that at the time, and many of those involved say this, that the movie was, not financially successful or largely ignored. And it's only in the decades since that it's come to the attention or the fan base has grown to such a scale that people know about it.
There's a film called Blood Rage that we get to this time around, and the star Mark Soper played twins. One's a crazy killer, one's not, but gets framed. And I will say no more about the plot, but he did this film, and people just it didn't get much distribution. It was very hard to find for many years. He's a very serious actor, takes himself very seriously, and so he still is trying to wrap his brain around why any of us care and would want to sit down. What's really cool about and unique about this particular In Search of Darkness trilogy is that every single interview is very exclusively arranged where they come to sit with us. We go to them, they come to us.
Yep.
It's not like at a convention where we catch them and or at a junket where we only have a couple minutes. We say we would love to talk to you about your projects, your career, your love or not about horror. And I say not because you talk to some folks like, Adrienne Barbeau or Heather Langenkamp, who are like, I'm happy to talk to you about my career, but I got to tell you, I don't really know these movies because I don't like horror, believe it or not.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that to me is equally interesting, though, because if like you're Heather Langenkamp and you're known, you're iconic for
Right.
the Elm Street franchise, and she's incredibly knowledgeable, and in fact she's back on the screen these days, but she works in special effects.
Yeah, I find it fascinating that was the transition she went into.
Oh yeah,
and we are, Scott and Marion are huge special makeup effects, practical makeup effects people. We love that, and so I was kind of tickled when I realized she had gone that direction. It's like
that's actually how I met her. I met her in my Entertainment Tonight days.
Yeah.
And I went to a Star Trek Into Darkness special preview that was this is when I met with Entertainment Tonight. There was probably about 20 other outlets there.
Right.
And it was like incredibly special because we got invited to go to Bad Robot headquarters, J.J. Abrams,
Yep.
His private lair.
Oh,
and
wow.
and they basically walked us from section to section, room to room, talking to Michael Giacchino, the composer, and talking to just the costumes and getting talking about that. And then we were talking about the makeup and practical effects, everything from Spock's ears and eyebrows to the Klingons and so on and so forth. And Heather's husband, David. And oh my gosh, apologies to Heather and David because the name is escaping me right this moment.
Trust me, you're talking to two men who are at a point in our lives where this is a common occurrence. So.
Well, there you go. It'll come to me later. But
yes.
I was, and he was doing a dog and pony show with a PowerPoint, and in the corner at the computer doing the PowerPoint, there's Heather Langenkamp. And here I am standing with all these people who are like listening and oohing and eyeing at this cool practical effects, and I'm like, why is Nancy in the corner there? And does anyone else see her, or am I hallucinating because I look forward?
Am I having a stroke? What's going on here?
I did smell burnt toast. So I went up to her after the presentation, and I just said, Heather. She's like, yeah. I said, hi, I'm David. I work at Entertainment Tonight. I'm just curious, what are you doing here? Do you work at Bad Robot? I mean, I had no idea what to say, really. And she's like, oh, I'm just helping out my husband, and we got to talking, and this is becoming a very long story about some other thing, but I think it's kind of a fun story because it's a serendipitous tale.
Sure.
Because I said, well, I work at Entertainment Tonight. I would love to, there's an Elm Street. I can't remember which anniversary, but it was coming right up. And I said, I'd love to talk to you about the Elm Street franchise if you want to talk to Entertainment Tonight about it. And she's just like, yeah, that sounds great. Give me a call. And I got in touch with her. And as I was talking to her, she's like, yeah, I think it would be really great if we did it in front of the Elm Street house, which is in Hollywood. It's on this one particular street. It's just right there. I think that would be great to do. And I said, oh, that sounds really great. And she's like, yeah, do you mind if I ask Robert if he wants to come? And I'm like, you twist my arm. Yeah, I guess you could bring Robert Englund along as well. And next thing I know, I'm the only guy talking to Robert Englund and Heather Langenkamp in front of the Elm Street house. The first time they'd done an interview together in front of this house is the last time they were working in front of it.
Oh, wow.
And not only that, but Robert, he and his wife came and they took a bunch of Christmas photos because they're like, oh, we like to take photos in front of the Elm Street house. And he had his glove. So he had his Freddy glove as well. And I was just like, yeah, yet another pinch me moment. And so all I can say is that it's important when you see an opportunity to go and talk to people. And when I was with Famous Monsters of Filmland, I did stuff with Heather then, to the point where I felt very comfortable when I did In Search of Darkness for the first one. I said, Heather, would you be so kind and be in this movie that nobody knows about? There's a documentary I'm putting together. And she said, I'd be happy to do it for you, David. And then she said, I don't think you know me as well as you think you do, because I don't really like horror movies.
That's perfect.
So I'd like to steer it just back to your career just briefly, because I'm very interested. So how did you go from Entertainment Tonight to Famous Monsters? Just briefly.
I think every story I will tell you is about serendipitous moments, because I have a wonderful handful of them in my life. And actually, Famous Monsters all ties into that. Maybe I should thank J.J. Abrams.
Oh.
Because after I got, this was a 3-day event where we saw a 10-minute preview of the movie. Then we went to Bad Robot. Then the next day was a junket with the cast of Star Trek Into Darkness. Mm-hmm. After that, I ran across town to go see a screening of The Hobbit. And I'm standing in line, and guy right in front of me, he's got a Famous Monsters sweatshirt. And I said, that's a really cool sweatshirt. And he's like, oh, thanks. And I could have ended there, right? Uh-huh. But I said, that was like my favorite magazine when I was a kid. I loved Famous Monsters. He's like, oh, really? Well, I'm the editor of Famous Monsters. What do you do? And I said, oh, well, that's awesome. Well, I work for Entertainment Tonight, and I just got back from a Star Trek Into Darkness thing. And he's like, oh, well, I've been looking for someone to write a piece for me, bridging the old original series with the new JJ movies. How would you like to write it? And I'm like, write for the magazine that I loved as a kid, twist my arm. And that got the ball rolling. That was Ed Blair, who was the editor prior to me. He gave me that and many other opportunities to write, including the Mel Brooks interview, which I won a Rondo for. And when I left Entertainment Tonight, or maybe Entertainment Tonight might have said goodbye to me after 13 years, as big corporations are wont when salary goes up and they want to pay people less.
Yep.
I'll just leave it there.
Yeah.
I was part of kind of a slow bloodletting of a lot of experienced staff. Yeah. But sometimes these things turn out to be a great blessing or a miracle, or I'm not a religious person, serendipitous. And they said, wow, you have more time. Why don't you come work for us and be the managing editor? And I said, twist my arm, I will do that. Yeah. And in the course of one issue of being the manager, Ed Blair went his separate ways with the publisher amicably, because he kept on writing for us, but he had other things he wanted to do. And next thing I know, I found myself being editor-in-chief of Famous Monsters of Filmland.
Wow.
How'd that happen?
I love stories like that.
Yeah, that's
oh, man.
And I even met Forrest Ackerman many years ago. He used to, he's no longer around.
Right. Yeah.
But Forrest Ackerman, who started Famous Monsters of Filmland, was the editor since 1958 with Jim Warren as the publisher. He used to, in Hollywood, open up his home to anyone who wanted to come and see his insane collection.
Yeah.
You got to go to the Acker Mansion?
I went to the Acker Mansion, and I met Mr. Forey Ackerman himself. Little would I know that one day I humbly would be standing in his shoes.
That's quite a story.
I love that.
That's quite a
Kind of
story.
crazy, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
in a good way. And no need to apologize for stories that take us down rabbit holes. We are notorious for spending most of an episode in the rabbit holes, and for most for most of our 10 or 12 listeners or whatever, they tend to like it that way. So
That's good. Well, it's your personality, and it's when it's conversational. You never know where you're going to go. Right?
Well, exactly.
Yeah,
and we just
that's
love
right.
hearing people's stories. We really do. We were very fortunate not that long ago to have Howard Berger come on from KNB and his co-author
Oh, okay.
Marshall Julius, because they've been promoting their book, Masters of Makeup Effects, and it's similar in that there's a lot of being in the right place at the right time, and also just the willingness to open up and to talk to people, and in hearing how their careers have gone in various directions simply because of that. Lots of serendipity there, and of course you have to be prepared to step up when the time comes. So you've got to put in your work in advance, but still, yeah, it's not.
That's very well. That's very true. By the way, it's David Anderson that is the effects guy.
Thank you.
Incredibly accomplished effects guy. But sorry, Sailor Jerry made me.
Yeah.
Hey, speaking of which, would you mind telling our audience just what it is you were imbibing tonight?
Yeah, well, sure. Well, normally when I jump on a podcast, I don't drink, although it is tempting. In my
Some of them probably more than others.
Last over here, I'm drinking Sailor Jerry neat because I really enjoy just sort of sipping on that. But I did bring kind of a show and tell thing, which I thought was very cool. And a good friend of mine is part of a company called Filmland Spirits, and they have just created a bunch of I've got some whiskey right here, but it's all thematic like movies. So it's basically not just a drink, but it's a whole story. So there's super cool retro art. Here's the bottle. This one, there's 4 new ones. This one's called Rise of the Robots, and it's got all this like Barbarella style retro.
Yeah, I love that artwork.
On the back, there's like each character and what they, the role they play, and it's like they've got movie credits. Even the top is like a film canister.
That's
and
cool.
Anyway, my pals made this, and I'm real proud of them. And filmlandspirits.com if you guys are interested in checking that out.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's real creative stuff. But they've won a bunch of awards. It's not just out of left field, and it's really good stuff.
In fact,
state rye whiskey, complex and spicy, with cinnamon and cloves on the nose, mint and pepper on the tongue, and a long chocolatey finish with hints of oak.
Oh, you just sold it. You just sold it.
Going back to the question you had asked, all these serendipitous moments really are nothing and useless if you're not patiently waiting for your time to come.
Right.
Right.
I used to go like to a bar looking for, I'm a happily married guy now. And I'd go to a party, I'd go to a bar, I'd go to whatever, a social event, looking for love, and it wouldn't find me. And I would walk away rather than saying, another failed night. I'd be like, your time is gonna come. And I'd sing that almost like a mantra, the Zeppelin tune, with a lot of things in my life. And what happens is when you're patiently you're just doing the things that you love, you're trying to enjoy the moment.
Yep.
But what happens is when these serendipitous moments converge, if you have assembled enough of the ingredients to qualify you for this opportunity, then it works.
Yep.
I have more serendipitous tales to tell you, but it's like I've gotten jobs, I've met people, I've created friendships and relationships based on just taking the opportunity to chit chat with a stranger, and things come out of it. And so that's, if I have any advice to dole out in life, is don't be shy. Don't talk someone's ear off if their body language says no. But I mean, it's like, listen, you see something that amuses you or interests you or is you're curious about, just talk to other human beings, and they'll
Sure.
either be receptive or they're not. And listen, I don't talk to anyone hoping that something's going to come out of it other than conversation.
Right.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
it's just quite amazing what can happen.
Well, and then that brings to mind how did you begin on your this project from
Well,
at the very beginning?
Mhm.
In Search of
Yes.
Darkness
Yes.
started with Famous Monsters connections.
Oh.
So now I'm running the magazine. I did 7 issues. They're bi-monthly. I worked for Famous Monsters for about a year, and then unfortunately, for a time, the publisher decided, because print was
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
less and less lucrative, decided to pause the magazine. And so I said reluctantly,
Yeah.
let's agree to part ways. That being
Right.
said, while I was doing Famous Monsters, one Jessica Dwyer was a writer for. She has her own site. She wrote for Horror Hound magazine and stuff like that. I met her and a couple other people on the set of The Conjuring 2. We did a set visit.
Oh, good.
And when you're on a set visit, you get to meet the filmmaker, you get to meet the actors, you get to see the set, but you also have to wait because they're filming.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
a lot of time to kill and chit chat. And I thought she was really great. I loved what she wrote. And I hired her to write for Famous Monsters of Filmland magazine. Um, and then we just kept in touch. And then at one point, I don't know how she got involved, but she got involved with Creator VC and this project out of the gate, In Search of Darkness. They had just done another documentary, or they were finishing it up. They had started it, called In Search of the Last Action Heroes. But she said, David, I'm doing this stuff with these folks in the UK. You got to check out their poster is amazing. Their teaser trailer is insane. They're going to do a movie about 80s horror. I don't even know what you would do. I'm one of the producers on it. You should talk to the guy who runs this. His name is Robin Block, and just take it from there. And I looked at the trailer. I looked at the poster. I said, these guys really get it. It's very, very cool. And Robin, I'll make this not a long story, as I'm capable of very long stories.
Take your time.
But what he likes to do when he's starting a project is he loves to get a collective mindset to. It's like think tank, to just work out what is required to make a project like this. What ideas can you bring to the table? And so I was part of like an advisor group for this. And long story short, I thought there were a lot of great ideas in it, but I had some ideas of my own. I had the experience from being at Entertainment Tonight for 13 years, running Famous Monsters of Filmland, doing lots of on-camera interviews, doing lots of writing. I just know this stuff. I'm very comfortable with this stuff. And so I threw my hat in the ring and I said, I know you already have people doing questions and stuff, but in Los Angeles, I'm happy to do either sit down and do some interviews, or even if you need some help writing the questions, I'm happy to be part of that. And I helped with some of the talent outreach as well. And I said, you might want to prioritize this and do things a little differently. And by a certain amount of time, Robin, I think, recognized that I was very passionate about this stuff, and B, arguably organized. And
Yeah,
That's good.
and he invited me to write and direct this movie, which I did not think was anything that was going to happen, getting involved in this with this group. But I've said for years, you got to make your own opportunities, and no one's going to hand you a film on a silver platter and say, I want you to direct this. And yet I kind of feel like that's what happened. I just had to wait a long time.
Yeah.
And next thing we knew, we were structuring this movie, and he had great ideas and wanted to make this movie, let's do 1980 to 1989. We'll just do every single movie in the 80s. And I said, Robin, absolutely. That sounds super cool. There's like hundreds of movies.
yeah.
we got to cherry pick. We got to maybe just stick with maybe a certain continent or something like that. There's got to be a way to organize it. And I also said it will, as cool as it is, it'll also be relentless if it's just 10 years straight, where it's just movie by movie by movie. And I felt context is incredibly important to talk about a decade. And that's why I wanted to insert these chapters to talk about all this stuff. Next thing I knew, I got to make a movie. And next thing I knew, the movie did really, really well. And next thing I knew, it was on Shudder. And next thing I knew, we wanted to make another. And next thing I knew, Robin invited me to do a sci-fi version of it. Yeah. Next thing I knew, part 2 did really well. And next thing I knew, we said we got to do another one. And next thing I knew, I'm talking to you guys about it.
That's really awesome. That's a great chain of events.
It really is. I sort of marvel at it. Wow. Well,
it's a dream of mine. And I went to film school in the East Coast, in Ithaca, upstate New York, and I graduated, and I took production and theory. I graduated. I made a couple student films. I aimed my car west, and I went straight to Los Angeles and started working on movies for the first 4 years and tried to figure it out, Sure. But my first dream, my big dream was, be, the next Spielberg, the next Lucas, the next Scorsese, whatever, but you can't just immediately do that. So I wanted to work in production first, and I wanted to run around on a set with a headset and a walkie-talkie, rolling and cut and be somewhat important and needed on the set. Yeah. And I did that for 4 years, TV, music, videos, commercials, mostly features, a lot of non-union stuff. But that's when I really started putting the plan together of, if I don't do this myself, it's not going to happen. And I also recognized that I don't think I could stand on the set for the rest of my life. It's my feet are going to hurt. And I also recognized that if things don't work out and I can't be some star director, what's plan B? My parents were always like, we love you, do what you want, we support you. You got to have a plan B if your big plan A dream is not going to come around. And so I always took that to heart, and I figured if I'm doing something in entertainment that I think is rewarding, that will be satisfying for me. And that kind of was what Entertainment Tonight became. And I ended up being there 13 years, which is pretty crazy because I didn't think I'd be there more than 6 months. Yeah. And, long story short, I settled into the rationale that it's always going to be writing about entertainment and all that kind of stuff. Doing interviews is something that I really, really love. I love picking the brains of creative talent, whether they're stars or creatives or, craftspersons. And the stars just aligned where all of a sudden now I'm getting to do this in a more reasonable milieu where I can have a family and live a life and still do production and make movies, but I'm not gone, on a set in Lourdes for a long time. So, this is really, really great right now, and I'm a happy camper.
It sounds like a good spot, quite frankly. It really does. Wow. Well, there are so many things I'd like to know, but I'm even myself debating where to start. And I don't want to just have you rehash.
We could chat for a little more if you want to.
You doing okay for time?
Yeah, maybe another 15, 20 minutes. Okay. I hate to put a cap on it, but I do.
Sure. No. Trust me. That's
and we do too for that
Los Angeles time.
Yeah.
Otherwise, Dave will spend way too much time editing.
Well, I'm wondering. The process of just sitting down with some of these people that you have viewed as icons, once you get over pinching yourself, you're sitting there. Obviously, you're there to do a job. Mm-hmm. Any surprises? Any interesting, nice surprises come up in the midst of all this? I mean, obviously, Heather Langenkamp explaining that she's really not a huge fan of horror movies. That's a nice little tidbit. But
sometimes there's just enjoyable moments with the convergence of scheduling.
Sure.
I happened to have Barbara Crampton and Jeffrey Combs back to back on the same day at the same location.
Oh, wow.
Jeffrey showed up early, and I got to see them the Reanimator duo and From Beyond duo reunite,
Wow.
and just, hey, so good to see you, and
That's
see
nice.
them be humans and happy with to see each other, and then
Yeah.
slide in for my photo op as well. But that's really fun. And I did
That's
that the
neat.
same for I flew to Pittsburgh to talk to Tom Atkins and Doug Bradley,
Oh,
Pinhead
wow.
himself,
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah,
and
absolutely.
they, again, the similar situation. Tom was a little early, Doug was running a little late because of me, not because of Doug. He was there on time, but I ran him through his paces longer, and they got together, and I got to see those two, which is always just a fun
Well, that's
moment.
pretty cool.
Outstanding.
But I just really enjoy talking to folks and having them absolutely surprise me with their knowledge and their passion
Yeah,
for the genre that I might not. Some are not so knowledgeable, but they know that what they know.
sure.
Some are have a much crazier sense of humor than I thought.
Yeah.
Others they just surprise me with what they bring to the table. And what's really great about the format is because they are coming to us and they know that they've got time. It's just always a joy when I say, well, we'll sit together for a half hour or 45 minutes, and then we're there for 2 hours. Clancy Brown.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah. We
I
love
got to,
Clancy Brown.
I sat down with Clancy, and it was the first time we were all sort of coming out of our COVID cocoons,
Mhm.
and so and Cassandra Peterson was like that too. The second time I sat down with her, it's like we were just human beings starved for social attention because
Sure.
we've been holed up in our houses or our bunkers, and so it was
Yeah,
just a pleasure to just chit chat and shoot the shit, and you know
absolutely.
and even with Clancy, we were like coming up on 3 hours, and I'm like, I hate to kick you out, Clancy, but we got someone else. And he's like, oh, you got things to do? That's cool. I probably have things to do too, and you know,
Well,
so
sure. I mean,
Oh,
I would think that, we talked earlier about all the material that you weren't able to use and is that if you tried to follow all these people you had the good fortune to interview, their career path, which would make for interesting viewing. Aside from that, yeah, the movie would be 20 times longer, but it must have been really interesting to have conversations with these people and hear about their career paths and how they came to be, where they are today or how they're viewed by, the fan base or whatever it might be. That's got to be really interesting.
it's I like I said earlier, I love to pick the brains of people.
yeah,
Because everyone must think, oh well, you're a horror icon. You must have loved horror and
Right.
followed that path and found success, and then made strategic choices to stay in horror. And they're like, no, I'm an actor and I wanted a job. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
but I get to insert a taste of that with I started doing it in Search of Darkness Part Two, and I do more of it in Search of Darkness Part Three, where I have people talk about themselves. So in
Yep.
Search of Darkness Part Two, Nancy Allen talked about herself. Nancy Allen on Nancy Allen.
Yep, I
Robert
love that.
England
I
on
thought that
Robert
was that
England.
was a great way to do that, David. Really, I really appreciated that.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
And it was like the perfect excuse because it kind of came out of it was born out of a problem where I was just like, all right, well, I'm talking to Nancy Allen, and I already covered Dress to Kill in part one.
You're
So I
right.
can't do Dress to Kill again, but obviously it would have been better if I had Nancy Allen for that first time around. So what's my solution?
Yep.
And I just thought, well, if she's talking about her career and the various things that she did in her genre or her approach to acting and work, I could totally put that Dress to Kill in there and it would make complete sense.
Yep.
Same conundrum with, say, talking to Adrienne Barbeau.
Yes.
I already did The Fog and I already did Creep Show, but we don't have Adrienne Barbeau. But she, very generously said, I'm here for you now. What can I do?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a way of structuring that where you can include that and it makes sense. And I think it also gives you a real good insight into who these people are as
Absolutely.
people and as just human beings, working and following their own passions.
Well, there's also something to be said for having, for lack of a better word, breathing space around the various segments, and a shift in tone, if you will. I think it just makes you appreciate each element a little more than when you come back to something. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure. I mean, these movies, if you take out the individual pieces, it gives you a taste of what this movie is capable of, but it really kind of does not do the movie justice.
Right.
I
Yeah.
gave you guys, and we could talk about what if you want, but I gave you guys a look at
Yes.
In Search of Darkness 3,
Yep.
and
Yes.
and it was very important for me to not just give you a segment. I wanted to give you a chapter. I wanted to give you a
Yeah.
couple movies to take a look at, because if by themselves, you kind of say, well, really, where's the cast of thousands? I only see one person talking. Or, whatever your misconceptions or disappointment might be, you really need to
Right.
sort of have this as be a collective tale.
Right. Right. No, I love the way it's structured. I really do.
Yeah, I'm right there with Dave, and the other thing that, and you mentioned it briefly, the other thing that I really appreciate in the whole series is it's not just about production or films here from the United States, but you go overseas. Or I was
Absolutely.
really interested in, especially because, well, right now my knowledge base is pretty limited, was the stuff from Mexico,
Mm-hmm.
which
Yes,
I thought was
exactly.
really
I,
interesting.
I, I think I was Scott. Excuse me for interrupting, but I loved getting that taste of that
Mm-hmm.
in this part three, because this is
Ruben
something about which I
Galindo
know almost nothing. You know.
Ruben Galindo Jr., a Mexican filmmaker who these days does like reality TV producing,
Right.
in Mexico City. But he made a bunch of, when he was young, made a bunch of horror films in the 80s that are really fun and
Yeah.
really entertaining. And he is an incredibly infectious interview. He just is constantly laughing and just reveling in his own story.
Sure.
And it's really, really fun. And I'm so glad to be able to, go to Mexico, talk about Mexican filmmaking, Spanish. We
Hmm.
go into Asian filmmaking. Uh,
Yeah, I mean the
we,
whole series is just jam packed full of that stuff.
yeah,
It's
there's
great. It
a lot
really is
going on.
great.
Thank you.
Yeah. I would be surprised if if anybody has covered the subject in anything even remotely similar fashion. And once you put all three together, like you said, that's crazy. That's in a good way. That's 14 plus hours of interesting content. I mean, it's kind of mind blowing.
Yeah.
It's like watching the Lord of the Rings trilogy with all the extras tossed in. You know,
You know what? After not
it's amazing.
directing, after not, sorry to talk over you, but
No, please go ahead.
after not directing for so many years, I really needed to play catch up. So I figured with each movie I get, I'll do two, arguably three in one film,
Oh my
just to
God.
compensate for all the lost years of writing about celebrity DUIs and deaths and
Oh dear.
and award shows and so on and so forth at
Right.
Entertainment Tonight. I got to do plenty of fun things at Entertainment Tonight, but sometimes it's easy to focus on the Kardashians and the Michael
Sure.
Jacksons of the world that
Right. Right.
I had to dive into.
Well, it really is. I think pretty amazing. And would you be so kind as to tell our audience how they can be involved with part three?
Yeah, absolutely. So part three is complete 99%. The only
Hmm.
thing that we have to do is the end credits.
Okay.
And what we like to do, because we're a crowd-funded project, is we
Yes.
started with a crowd-funded event, and then we sell. If you go to 80shorrordoc.com, 80s, 80shorrordoc.com, between now and Halloween at midnight, you can get your copy of In Search of Darkness Part 3. You could also get, if you missed Part 1 and Part 2, this is all about getting physical copies.
Yes.
You can get the trilogy as a box set, or you can mix and match however you want to do it. there's all sorts of cool swag and stuff. We've got really awesome posters. We even have like a membership card, which is like a video membership card, but it's got access to deals with merchandise from horror retailers.
Yeah.
All sorts of stuff. It's all there. I mean, it's all listed. There's a digital download. There's a download of the soundtrack. But what's I think super cool is because these are crowdfunded projects, the content is very driven by our fan community and the backers, where we surveyed them and we did polls to determine what they wanted this time around in part 3 in terms of the films. And so there are 2 ways that we're happy to give back. And one is, first of all, getting your name in the credits, or if you choose to do, put your podcast as the name in the credits, or someone that you love, you could do that. And this becomes more than just a movie that you bought. It's a keepsake, and it's something that you could be proud of, crossing the line and shepherding it over to the finish line.
Sure.
But another thing that's really, really super cool that we're doing, because this is the last installment in this trilogy, is I wanted to take this community and put them in the film. And so what I'm asking you guys individually, everyone who's listening, what you could do is you could record a video testimonial about why you love horror movies, 80s horror, a film or a filmmaker, or even the In Search of Darkness franchise. And we're going to line those end credits run real long. And I can't promise every single one, but I'm going to put as many as I can, throughout the entire end credits. And I think there won't be a dry eye in the house when people are talking about their love of the genre from their hearts. Sure. And the best way you could do that is if you go to our socials, which is 80s Horror Doc on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. There's a Linktree link. You click on that, and then you'll see how you can do this video testimonial.
Perfect.
I think right now you have to go through Google and put your Google login and stuff like that. So there is one who hopefully that'll be gone by the time people are listening to that. But anyway, I just think it's a pretty cool thing, and it's the least I could do to give back to our community, because that's really who drives the existence of this film.
Sure.
Yep.
No, we fully understand that and appreciate it. Yeah. Well, this is great. I wish we could continue, but we've kept you here for an eternity.
Well, it's been my pleasure. As you guys know, we're all, perhaps we're all capable of long-winded tales.
We love it. We love it.
Yes.
And I just want to say once again how much we enjoy the series. We're happy to.
Yeah, it's really excellent.
Yeah,
happy
to promote this final part of the trilogy. We'll let people know, where to track all this down, and I think we should raise a glass to all the monster kids out there,
Clink.
And all those folks who love 80s horror.
Right.
And
the ones we lost. We'll pour it out a little bit.
That's right. Absolutely. So, cheers, everyone. David, thank you so much. Be well. We'll be in touch. And good luck to you. We look forward to what's going to come the next chapter of your life.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
It's been
absolutely.
a real joy.
Thanks again.